Ending, if you've noticed that it's gotten harder to stay strong as you've gotten older, you're not imagining it. There's a real biological reason for it, and protein timing is a bigger part of the story than most people realize. Today, we're going to look at one specific type of protein called casein, where it comes from, what the research actually says about it, and whether it might be worth including more of it in your diet. No miracle claims, just the science, clearly explained. Why muscle changes with age? Let's start with what's actually happening in your body. From around age 50 onwards, most people gradually lose muscle mass. Researchers call this sarcopenia. It happens for several reasons: hormonal changes, reduced physical activity, and importantly, changes in how the body handles protein. Younger muscles respond quite efficiently to protein. Even a small amount triggers what's called muscle protein synthesis, the process of building and repairing muscle tissue. As we age, muscles become less sensitive to that signal. You need more protein, and in some cases, you need it delivered differently to get the same response. Researchers refer to this reduced sensitivity as anabolic resistance. This is why protein recommendations for older adults are generally higher than for younger people. Current evidence from organizations like the European Society for Clinical Nutrition and Metabolism suggests that adults over 65 benefit from around 1.0 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, and possibly more for those who are very active or recovering from illness. That's meaningfully more than the standard 0.8 g/kg figure most people are familiar with. What is casein? Dairy protein comes in two main forms, whey and casein. They behave quite differently in the body. Whey is a fast-digesting protein. After you eat it, amino acids, the building blocks of protein, enter your bloodstream relatively quickly, within about 60 to 90 minutes. This causes a fairly sharp rise in blood amino acid levels, which can be a strong trigger for muscle protein synthesis. Casein digests much more slowly. It forms a gel in the stomach, which slows down how quickly it's broken down and absorbed. Amino acids from casein enter the bloodstream gradually over several hours. Some studies suggest up to 5 or 6 hours. The rise in blood amino acids is lower and less sharp, but it lasts considerably longer. Both patterns have advantages. Whey's rapid spike is useful around exercise. Casein's slow, sustained release is useful during longer periods without eating. Most notably, overnight, casein makes up roughly 80% of the protein in cow's milk. It's also the primary protein in most natural cheeses. And it's particularly concentrated in cottage cheese and ricotta, where the curds retain most of the casein while some of the whey drains off. What does the research actually show? This is the part that matters most, so let's be precise about what the evidence says and where the gaps are. Overnight muscle protein synthesis. A well-known study by Ress and colleagues, published in Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise in 2012, gave older men 40 grams of casein protein before sleep, while a control group had a non-caloric drink. The casein group showed significantly higher rates of muscle protein synthesis overnight. This was a meaningful finding because overnight is typically the longest period adults go without protein. And muscles can break down tissue during that fasting window to supply amino acids the body needs for other functions. Subsequent research, including work from Maastricht University, replicated and extended these findings, showing that pre-sleep protein, particularly casein, could enhance overnight recovery and muscle building, especially when combined with resistance exercise. Casein versus whey for older adults. A number of studies have compared casein and whey in older adults. The results are more nuanced than a simple one is better conclusion. Some research suggests that whey's faster amino acid delivery may actually be more effective at triggering muscle protein synthesis in a single acute measurement. Other studies, looking at longer time frames, find that casein's sustained delivery leads to less overall muscle protein breakdown across a full day, which may be equally important. A 2013 study by Dyke and colleagues found that in older men, ingesting casein before sleep led to better overnight muscle protein balance than a placebo, but the comparison between casein and whey in overnight conditions specifically showed casein to have an edge in that context. The honest summary: whey may be better acutely around exercise. Casein appears to have particular advantages during extended fasting periods like sleep. For older adults, combining both rather than choosing one may be more effective than either alone. This is one reason researchers and dietitians often suggest varied protein sources rather than a single best food. Does it actually build muscle over time? Short-term studies measuring protein synthesis rates are useful, but what matters most is whether eating more casein leads to actual muscle gains over weeks and months. The evidence here is more modest. A 2015 Cochrane review of protein supplementation in older adults found that while protein supplementation did support muscle mass and strength, especially when combined with resistance exercise, the effects were moderate rather than dramatic. No single protein type was found to be definitively superior across all outcomes. The takeaway is that total daily protein intake, spread across meals, combined with some form of regular physical activity, even light resistance exercise, appears to be the most reliably effective approach. Casein-rich foods contribute meaningfully to that total, and timing some of that protein before sleep may add a modest additional benefit. Practical sources of casein: if you want to include more casein in your diet, you don't need supplements to do it. Several common foods are naturally high in casein. Cottage cheese is one of the richest whole food sources. A standard cup of low-fat cottage cheese contains roughly 25 grams of protein, the majority of which is casein. It's also relatively low in calories, making it easy to fit into most diets. It requires no preparation and can be eaten plain or mixed with fruit, herbs, or other foods depending on your preference. Hard and aged cheeses, including Parmesan, cheddar, and Swiss, are also predominantly casein. Because they are more concentrated, even a small serving around 30 grams or 1 ounce provides 7 to 10 grams of protein. Aged cheeses like Parmesan are also naturally very low in lactose, which can be helpful for people with lactose sensitivity. Ricotta is softer and milder than cottage cheese, with a similar protein profile around 14 grams per half cup of part skim ricotta. It works well in cooked dishes or as a spread. Milk and plain yogurt also contain casein, though in lower concentrations per serving than cottage cheese or cheese. Greek yogurt is somewhat higher in protein than regular yogurt and is a convenient option. Casein protein powder is also available and is commonly used in protein shakes, particularly before bed. It's a reliable option if getting enough protein through food alone is difficult. That said, whole food sources provide additional nutrients, calcium, phosphorus, and B vitamins that isolated powders don't. A few things worth noting on dairy fat and heart health. The video this script is responding to makes the claim that dairy fat is not a concern. The reality is more nuanced. Current evidence does not support the old view that all saturated fat is uniformly harmful, and some large observational studies have found no increased cardiovascular risk from moderate dairy consumption. However, individual responses vary, and people with specific cardiovascular conditions should follow their doctor's guidance rather than general population findings. On lactose intolerance, if you have lactose intolerance, aged hard cheeses are a reasonable option since most of the lactose is broken down during the aging process. Cottage cheese and ricotta contain more lactose, though many people with mild intolerance tolerate them in moderate amounts. A dietitian can help you figure out what works for your situation. On processed cheese, the original video correctly notes that processed cheese products labeled cheese food or cheese product are nutritionally different from natural cheese. They typically contain less protein, more sodium, and various additives. For protein purposes, natural cheese is the more reliable choice. Individual variation matters. Protein needs vary with body size, activity level, kidney function, and overall health. People with chronic kidney disease in particular may need to limit protein intake and should speak with a nephrologist or dietitian before making significant changes. Sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss, is real, and protein plays a genuine role in managing it. Casein, the slow-digesting protein found in dairy foods, does appear to have advantages for overnight muscle protein synthesis, and there's reasonable evidence supporting the idea of including some casein-rich food before bed as part of a broader high-protein diet. But the overall picture matters more than any single food. Total daily protein intake, distributed across meals, combined with regular physical activity, remains the most evidence-supported strategy for maintaining muscle strength as you age. Cottage cheese, ricotta, and aged cheeses are nutritious, convenient sources of casein worth including if you enjoy them. They're not magic, but they're genuinely useful. If you have specific concerns about your muscle health, protein intake, or diet, a registered dietitian or your GP is the best place to start. They can give you guidance tailored to your own health history.